Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So sorry for the few minutes delay. We have Maddie Fox with us. She's gonna be taking us through the art of present leadership. It's a real honor to have Maddie here with us. Thank you so much for hosting this learning circle.
Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, welcome everybody. I feel free to put your cameras on if you would like. It's always nice to see faces. And yeah, I'd really like you to engage with the chat today. We will have some Q&A at the end, but please do, I've got questions for you as we go. And so, yeah, please do engage with the chat and use your emojis and all of that. Okay. Tanishka said, we're talking about present moment leadership today. So show up before you speak, the art of present moment leadership. And this can apply whatever role you might be in. Brief little bit about me. So I'm based in the UK. I'm based in Norfolk in the UK. It's a little lump on the east coast of the UK. Quite near the coast. I specialize in developing leaders, building high-performing teams, and helping clients successfully navigate through change. I'm an accredited coach with the ICF. I'm a coach supervisor. There's a couple of the places I've trained with, but I have many teachers along the way with a particular interest in how to bring whole self both to work, my own work, and for other people to bring that to their work. I'm also trained in a bunch of psychometric tools. So I did some psychometric training very early on. Great way of sort of helping to understand little insights into your own process, but also understanding other people's processes as well. So the quality of your attention determines the quality of other people's thinking. This is a Nancy Kline quote, who wrote an incredible book called More Time to Think. So if you think about in our very hyper-connected world, right, we can always tap in now, can't we? We've got a computer in our hands, which we certainly did when I started my career working for a computer retailer, and we were selling the first sort of home computers that people had, which were very much fixed to the desk and not something that you would be carrying around in your pocket. So the scarcest resource, I believe, that we have now isn't time, money, or talent. It's our attention. Our attention is always being drawn somewhere else. And as leaders, there are so many demands on us. Yeah. So whether it's decisions, it's people, it's customers, there is always a demand for the time. So I believe any leader that masters attention doesn't just change their own performance, they transform everyone around them. So I want you to have a little think about the last meeting you attended where the leader was physically present, but mentally somewhere else. How did you know they were not present? What was it that you noticed? What could you feel? And if you could perhaps put one or two words in the chat about how it felt to be with someone who was there, but not really present with you. Don't be shy, share what it was like. Yeah, lovely, thank you. Body language and tone of responses, yeah. Yeah, felt like a one-sided conversation. Yeah, very true. Yeah, not paying attention. Yeah, I can really feel like the meeting's not important. Yeah, what you're bringing is not important for them. Yeah, all of those things. So what you have just described there really is the leadership presence deficit, and it is costing us far more than we realize. Think about that sort of feeling like it's a one-sided conversation, or that what you're bringing is not important. Those things chip away at employees, and after time, a culmination of those are the things that will make them leave. So today we're going to explore the importance of presence and the impact this can have on others' thinking and their creativity. And as I said, we're going to have time for some Q&A at the end, but feel free to sort of share your thoughts as we go. So let's start by thinking about beyond physical presence. What is it that the science says or the research says? So MIT researchers discovered that even when smartphones are face down and silent during meetings, cognitive capacity drops by 10%. And this is simply because the brain is monitoring for any potential notifications. So you can imagine what that's like when people are in meetings with their laptops and Slack notifications are on or Teams notifications, and those things are continuously drawing them away. Your brain contains specialized cells called mirror neurons that literally mirror the mental state of the people that you're focused on. So when you're truly present with someone, their mirror neurons activate, creating what researchers call neuroresonance. You're literally synchronizing your brain states. This is why some leaders can walk into a room and immediately kind of shift that energy because they're creating this neurological alignment. Now, equally, of course, if a leader comes in and they're distracted, a leader's on their phone or a leader's on their computer, then it can signal to us that, well, then it's not that important and I get to do that as well. There was some Harvard research spanning about 12,000 diary entries from knowledge workers, and it revealed something counterintuitive. 15 minutes of a leader's full present attention creates more psychological safety, innovative thinking, and creativity than hours of distracted interaction. So what we know from this and what we can tell from this is that the brain really craves presence more than it craves time. And in fact, and I will go on to talk a little bit later about some of Nancy Kline's work around this and how in thinking pairs, 2 minutes of uninterrupted thinking time for yourself can actually generate more thinking than it could in a much longer period of time. Okay, so let's do a real-time presence audit. And this is all about honesty and no judgment right now. I want to know, I want you to honestly assess your attention right now in this moment. So if you're 90 to 100% there, type full. If you're 70 to 89%, type mostly. And if you're less than 70%, type partial. So if you can pop that into the comments. And again, there is no judgment here, right? This is just data and interesting for us to know. Great, thank you. And all of this is normal, right? It's very hard for us to be 100% present all of the time. More importantly is that we can notice it and that we can have the awareness, oh yeah, actually, I'm not quite present here anymore. And how can I bring myself back? So simply asking the question, how present am I right now, will build this intentional attention. And later on, we're going to have a look at some tools on how to do this. So the power of uninterrupted attention. When was the last time you were able to speak to someone uninterrupted? Do you remember? Did it ever happen? Microsoft research shows that the average knowledge worker is interrupted every 11 minutes, and it takes 23 minutes to fully refocus. Now, I noticed we had a couple of software engineers on the call, and engineers will be the ones that will often tell you, especially when they're coding, there's a really very obvious kind of gap there, and that sort of need to focus on time, need to focus on the one thing that they're doing. We don't necessarily always see that with other workers, and the research is backing it up that it's exactly the same. What most leaders don't realize is that when you interrupt someone's thinking, you're not just disrupting their current thought, you're fragmenting their cognitive capacity for the entire interaction. Now, Nancy Kline, I've mentioned already. For over 30 years, Nancy Kline has studied what she calls thinking environments. Her research shows that when people receive truly uninterrupted attention, not just quiet, but the felt sense that someone is completely focused on them. So go back to that, what you shared about those meetings before. There are tells, right? So they might be there, but not physically there. So how, it's about bringing their presence and their whole attention to you in that moment. So like I say, not just quiet, but that felt sense that someone is completely focused on them. Their IQ effectively increases by 10 to 15 points in that moment. Their access to their own intelligence literally expands. So uninterrupted attention activates our parasympathetic nervous system, moving people from this reactive amygdala-driven, which you may have heard about, thinking to the reflective prefrontal cortex. So our brains haven't actually transformed much since the caveman days, where when we saw a threat, then our amygdala came into action in our brain, a small part of the brain that says what to do. Am I going to run from that threat? Am I going to fight? In present day, we don't necessarily have saber-toothed tigers in our office, and yet there are some other things that may cause that response in us. Personally, for myself, it's the email pop-up sometimes where you see half the sentence. That can also bring me out into that same response. So when you don't interrupt people, you're not just being polite, you're actually optimizing their brain function, allowing them to purely focus on something. So the quality of everything we do depends on the quality of the thinking that we do first. And as we've just talked about, in order to do that quality thinking in the first place, what we need is this uninterrupted intention. As leaders, the job isn't just to have the best ideas, it's to create the conditions where the thinking can emerge. So how do we create the right conditions so that other people can do their best thinking? So we're going to experience the power of uninterrupted attention right now. So I'd like you to grab a pen and some paper, which hopefully you have to hand. And then we're going to do a thinking challenge right now. And I'm going to give you another way as to how we'll do this afterwards. But initially, we're going to do this as an individual exercise where I'm going to give you 2 minutes of interrupted attention, some complete silence to think about a challenge. So it could be a work challenge, it could be a personal challenge, something that's real for you right now. And I want you to start on your piece of paper by writing, I want to think about. And if you're unsure, there's no stopping in this. I want you to just keep writing and keep writing the whole way through this. So I want you to think about is your prompt. You start with that and you keep going with that until something else comes to you that you want to write down. At any point, if you feel like you've run out of thoughts, you write, I want to think about again. So you just keep going. This is a sort of way of accessing unconscious thoughts by just continuing to write for the whole 2 minutes. Can we get a thumbs up maybe to see if you are ready? I appreciate some of you might be in the car. So if you're traveling and if you're unable to have a piece of paper, I want you to keep that going in your mind. So I want to think about and then keep thinking about the problem in your mind. And again, this is going to be totally uninterrupted time. And your 2 minutes starts now. And that is your 2 minutes. So thank you for getting involved in that activity with me. Perhaps write in the chat, how did your thinking evolve in those 2 minutes? Perhaps say if you made some progress. Or perhaps if you felt like it was hard to stay focused for that time. Lovely, thank you. More clarity. Yeah, great, thank you. Made progress. I was locked in. Yeah, I was lost too. That's also a very valid response. Even 2 minutes of uninterrupted time is not something that we get very often, right? And so all of this is a practice to be in and noticing how that impacts us. Yeah, found it flowing, could have easily done for more minutes. Yeah, some rushed thoughts in there as well. Yeah, initially lost but picked up. And so unconscious writing in that way, so using a prompt, and you could use any prompt you like. Not sure if anyone's heard of morning pages, but that's an unconscious writing journaling tool. And you could start with, I don't know what to write. And if you keep writing that for long enough, what it does is it gets under the surface of us and brings out all those unconscious thoughts. So yes, I was doing one at the weekend, and initially lost is absolutely how I felt. And then after a while, you're like, oh, this starts working, and it picks up. So another way you can do this is you can find a willing participant to experiment with you, and you can do this as a speaking exercise. So rather than writing down, find a partner, and Nancy Kline calls this thinking time. And so you could have 2 minutes each way. I do it with a friend every week. We have 10 minutes each way. And the question is, what do you want that you ask the other person is, what do you want to say, think, or feel? And then you let them speak uninterrupted for that time until they say that they're done. At some point, if there's a really long pause, you could say, is there anything else you want to say, think, or feel? Just to encourage them that there is more space to think. I have done this exercise many times with people, and it's quite amazing as the person who sits there and listens when somebody says, oh, wow, yeah, I've answered it. And off they go, and they've answered their problem. And you have not said a word, you have just been there, and that time has been uninterrupted for them. So this isn't a nice to have, it's more a strategic imperative. Uninterrupted attention literally makes people smarter. Okay. So we were talking there about the quality of everything is dependent on the quality of the thinking that we do first. Yet a Stanford research example found that 67% of senior managers report that they don't have time for strategic thinking. But here's the paradox. The more complex our challenges become, the more we need the kind of deep, nuanced thinking that only emerges in presence. We're trying to solve 21st century problems with fragmented, reactive thinking. And some research by Gallup on 2.5 million manager-employee relationships found that teams with highly present leaders show 25% higher performance metrics, 40% better retention rates, 70% fewer safety incidents, and 12% increase in customer engagement. So it really is something that is going to add an awful lot of value. So I said earlier that the goal isn't necessarily to be present 100% of the time. It's to be able to recognize when you're not and do what you need to come back into presence. The more critical factor, therefore, is being able to be incredibly self-aware about what's going on for you in any given moment, and practicing tools to help you get to where you need to be. One of my favorite leadership books, in fact, I have it here, is The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And their model in there is this simple black line. What they say is that at any point, a leader is, or a person is, above the line or below the line. When we're above the line, we are open, curious, and committed to learning. And when we are below the line, we are closed, defensive, and committed to being right. And again, this is about us being able to say, where are we at any given moment? And not judge that, right? Have some compassion for that. There will be reasons as to why we might be below the line. So think about that for a moment. And what do you think the impact is on, say, decision making when it's done from above the line or from a below the line place? Present decisions lead to better outcomes, which create more trust, which enables more authentic communication and leads to better thinking and leads, therefore, of course, to better decisions. There is a compound effect with our presence. You think, so, you know, if I'm above the line, I'm open and curious, I'm committed to learning. So it may be that I realize that the decision I have needs some work. It could, it could have some input from people around me. That's very hard to do when we're actually below the line. Okay, so another question for the chat. Think about the most important decision you need to make in the next week. And I want you to rate your current mental clarity around this decision on a scale of 1 to 10. So 10 being crystal clear, fully present to all the factors, and 1 at the other end of the scale being overwhelmed and reactive and unclear. So have a think about your decision and pop in the chat where you think you are on that scale of 1 to 10. So we've got a 7, nice. Five, nice, thank you for sharing. Yeah, 6. Yeah, great, thank you. So anything below a 7 suggests that the decision will benefit from more presence before action. This isn't about taking more time. Remember, what we've said is actually that 2 minutes that you just did then, that could bring you a little bit more clarity about that decision. So how can we learn to bring more of ourselves to the time that we have? One way is to practice a more embodied presence. You may have come across Amy Cuddy's, Harvard's Amy Cuddy, when she discovered that physiology doesn't just reflect your mental state, it creates it. She talked about 2 minutes in the power pose, and that it can increase confidence hormones by 20% and decreases stress hormones by 25%. And so for a while there, she had everybody doing power poses before a presentation. For leaders, this goes deeper. Your embodied presence is constantly communicating to others' nervous systems, whether it's safe to think creatively, take a risk, or speak the truth. What most leaders don't realize is you can shift your entire physiological state and therefore your presence and influence in less than 5 minutes. This is a practice that can be done in the flow of work, and you can begin to access it right in the moments when you are under pressure, particularly if we practice regularly. So this is an activity called grounding in presence, and I'm going to encourage you to do this with me. You can do it sitting or standing. And we're going to do this to shift your state. So if you think about moments in the day where you're under pressure, it could be too many people asking questions. It could be that you're going from meeting to meeting to meeting, and there's no time in between. So you're carrying with you all of that stuff from the first meeting to the next meeting and so on. Or perhaps you've been in a meeting and the leader's been there on their phone, not really paying any attention. So how can we ground ourselves in our presence to make sure that the way we respond to that comes from a place of choice, rather than how we might sort of act under, how we might sort of react, if you like, under those usual pressures. Now, the body learns in contrasts. So I want you to start by imagining that you're nearing the end of the day, which actually might well be the case for some of you. You've been in back-to-back meetings all day. There's been no time to process anything, and you have still got a bit of time to go. You might be feeling anxious about some work that you haven't been able to do. Now, as you imagine this, I want you to feel this in the shape of your body. So perhaps your hands are gripping quite tightly. Perhaps your shoulders are raised. Maybe your jaw is tense. Maybe you're just not really here and your mind is somewhere else. Perhaps your brow has tightened. Now I want you all to be able to feel that and then exaggerate it a little bit further so you can really feel the stress of that day in your body. Okay, that's probably enough of that. So let it go. Maybe even shake it out a little bit. And either seated or standing, I want you to make sure that you have got both feet flat on the floor, with your legs about hip distance apart. Feel all of your feet on the floor, spreading out your toes. Taking in a few deep breaths. Making sure that your exhale is longer than your inhale. Now, starting at your feet, I would like you to scan up the body, noticing and paying any attention to places that have tension, and seeing if you can let that go. Typical spots might be around the knees, the tummy, shoulders, jaw, letting the jaw go. Now noticing if you can for any sensation or lack of sensation. This is all data. Or can you notice for temperature in your body? Now we're going to focus on 3 different dimensions. So your length, width, and depth of your body. So if we come to length first, I want you to imagine that you're pulling up through the crown of the head without tensing, just growing a little bit taller, whilst at the same time your legs and your feet feel connected to the ground. And then coming to your width. Feeling for the sides of your body and just seeing if you can feel, sense, imagine taking up a little bit more space. And we're going to do the same with the front and the back of the body. And as you do this, you might be thinking about taking up the space that is rightfully yours. Now I invite you to set a clear intention for how you want to show up in the next important conversation you need to have. Not what you need to do, but how you would like to be in that conversation. So now in the chat, if you could, what do you feel now about that stress that we were inducing just before we started that presencing activity? Does anyone notice anything different? Yeah, good relief. Yeah. So people can report not even remembering the bit of the stress that they had, before. And that really bringing you into the present moment can help to let go of all that stuff from that was in your mind before. So this is what presence feels like. Notice how simply grounding yourself shifted how you feel, and know that this will have a ripple effect on the people that come into contact with you. Now, I talked about being able to do this under the usual pressures. That can be challenging when you're focused with, a demanding boss, or someone else demanding your time. And so in order to be able to access that in the moment, it's like any other new skill. It is to make it automatic in us, we need to practice it. So I'm going to invite you to do the 30-day presence challenge. Stanford, some research from Stanford discovered that lasting behavior change happens through tiny habits, micro practices that are so small they're almost impossible to fail at, but compound into major transformations. The good news about presence practices is they show immediate results even as they build long-term capacity, as you've seen from doing that just 2 minutes there. So if we think about the 3 domains of present moment leadership, it's going to be self-presence. So this is your ability to be aware of your own internal state without being hijacked by it. Think about that being above the line, below the line. The second one is other presence. So this is your capacity to be fully available to the person in front of you. So it's providing that uninterrupted attention that we talked about earlier. And then the third is around situational presence. This is an awareness of the broader context, energy, and dynamics that are at play. So leaders with high situational presence make decisions that account for ripple effects that others might miss. So how will you practice? You may have come up with something yourself already through this, and I've got some examples here that you can also choose from. So it's one micro practice that you will commit to for the next 30 days. So 3 conscious breaths before every meeting. And with that, I would focus on the breathing out for longer than you breathe in. That physiologically calms our nervous system. Leave your phone in another room during one-to-one conversations. Conducting a 60-second body scan before every important call. Asking yourself what's most important right now every hour, and perhaps you could put a reminder on your phone that prompts you to do that, or a reminder in your calendar. And then the final one, at the end of each workday, reflect on thinking, when was I most present today? And that can help us to build a recognition of, oh yeah, I'm doing this. I was present with this. That can help to build that muscle. So I invite you to type into the chat now which one you're going to commit to trying over the next 30 days. Thank you, Ruchi. About 0.5. Yes, and if you are quite an introspective person, doing that reflection each day is a really lovely tool to use. So anyone else willing to put a number that they're going to commit to over the next 30 days? Yeah, lovely, 0.5. Thank you. So anything that you think, oh, lovely, 4, yes, thank you. Anything that you think might get in the way of practicing? Anyone's got ideas, please place them in the chat. Someone else practicing 4 and 5, lovely. Now, as we've said, these small micro practices are so small that they should be very doable, but inevitably, they can be incorporated during the day. Yeah, absolutely. Inevitably, there may be some things that actually get in the way of practice. Mentally, we may get a bit distracted. The average person has 60,000 thoughts per day, 95% of which are repetitive. Presence isn't about stopping those thoughts, but it is about being, isn't about stopping thoughts. It's more about being able to notice them and let them go. We also, of course, have a digital addiction. The average knowledge worker checks email every 11 minutes. Each check fractures attention, remember, for up to 23 minutes. And then everything can feel urgent, right? We've lost the ability to distinguish between reactive and responsive action. And some of those moments could be a really great moment to practice one of these micro practices. So as you said, they can be incorporated during the day. I don't know, if you notice that you want to check email, maybe take 3 breaths before you do it. It's now the right time to do it. Maybe you're starting to feel this sort of sense of urgency that everyone has around you. Then dive into one of these micro practices before you make a decision about jumping into that. So I've begun with talking about that, in our hyper-connected world, attention is one of the scarcest resources. Well, the leader who masters their own attention doesn't just improve their performance, they become a force multiplier for everyone else around them. Your presence is contagious. Remember that. Your attention is a gift, and your ability to be fully here right now is your greatest competitive advantage. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming more fully who you are already. Every micro practice on here and every one that you do over the next 30 days will show results in your interactions. Imagine if every leader in your organization practiced just one of these principles for 30 days. Imagine the ripple effect through teams, decisions, innovations, and culture. This is how transformation happens, not through grand gestures, but through the accumulation of present moments and the accumulation of those small practices. So here's my final challenge before we open up for some Q&A. For the next 24 hours, be the most present person in every room that you enter, physically or virtually. It's still very noticeable on screen. Notice what changes, notice how others respond, and notice what becomes possible when you show up before you speak. So thank you for your presence and engagement today, and engagement with the chat. It's been great to be with you all. If there are any questions, feel free to either unmute yourself or if you'd like to put a question in the chat, I'm very happy to see if I can answer it for you. No questions? Oh. Someone, it's just someone connecting now. No, well, if there are no questions, then thank you very much. for listening to the talk today. Here we go. We've got one before I let you go. With multitasking being glorified as the hallmark of efficiency, how do we still maintain presence? Yes, isn't that interesting? So there was, and I can't remember where it came out of, but there was a big amount of research that talked about multitasking and how we can't actually multitask. It's not possible. What we can do is task switch, sometimes relatively quickly, so that it appears that we are multitasking. And I think that's a really, it's an interesting point. We still seem to be wearing this badge of busyness, makes us more important. Yet what we're saying here is it's really the opposite will get us to greater efficiency. And so, I think to your question about how do we maintain that presence is you saw what you could do in 2 minutes today. With 2 minutes of focused attention. Like, can you apply those small points of time to any of that multitasking or that tasking to allow for you to do some better thinking around it? Excuse my dog in the background. Has decided to get involved at this late stage of the game. So thank you for your thank yous, and thank you for your presence today.
Thank you everyone for joining the session. Feel free to reach out in case you have any questions for Maddie. You can send it to info@WeAce or tajkamodi@WeAce. It'll be perfect.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. Yes, always happy to answer any questions via you. Thank you, Tanishka.
Of course. Thank you so much, Maddie. Thank you, everyone.